Africa has the potential to be the success story of the 21st century. There is a new generation of exceptional leaders. Sub-Saharan Africa has enjoyed sustained economic growth over the last decade. But this immense potential is matched by immense challenges. Half of Africa's people still live in extreme poverty. In a country like Sierra Leone, 1 in 7 children die before their 5th birthday, and life expectancy is just 40 years. But I passionately believe with help, Africa can and will lift itself out of poverty. Aid from richer countries is obviously important. As Prime Minister of Great Britain, I helped encourage a step change in support for Africa at the G8 summit in 2005. But aid is not enough. Aid must be matched by visionary leadership and good governance. This is why I founded the Africa Governance Initiative. Rwanda, for example, where AGI has worked since 2008, shows just what is possible. 15 years ago, it suffered the trauma of genocide. Now, under the leadership of Paul Kagame, it is making huge strides forward. Deaths from malaria have been halved. Economic growth has been over 10%. And last year it topped the World Bank's list of best business reforming countries. In Sierra Leone, we've worked alongside government ministers and senior officials as they help thousands of farmers escape from poverty and give pregnant women and young children access to the health care they need. In Liberia, our team is helping Africa's first female president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and her government as she strives to rebuild her country after its devastating civil war. AGI teams are working with these outstanding leaders to turn their vision into reality for the benefit of all their citizens. The AGI teams, made up of experts from the public and private sector, work at the highest level of government. They help put in place effective systems and build capacity to deliver the improvements in infrastructure, health, agriculture, education, and the economy, which are essential for sustainable development. Much has been achieved, but there is much more to be done. Abolishing poverty in Africa depends upon this better governance, strong leadership, and of course economic growth. This change has got to be driven from within the continent, but it is our responsibility to support those leaders who seek to realize Africa's tremendous potential. The work of our charity is only possible with the generous support of our donors and partners. With your help, a new generation of African leaders can lift their people out of poverty and move beyond aid for good. Thank you for your support.
Good evening, Rowan. It's the 20th of May 2016 and it's about 11:45, and obviously I'm making you my usual Friday evening video to reassure you I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. And obviously I haven't seen any Al-Qaeda this week either, otherwise I would have been straight on YouTube with my Al-Qaeda video to let you know I'd spotted them at long last. I wonder if you're aware. Now, let me think. Osama bin Laden was from Saudi Arabia, and Al-Qaeda is an Arabic name and they speak Arabic in Saudi Arabia. And in Saudi Arabia, Al-Qaeda is actually a slang term for the toilet. So just imagine that. What kind of self-respecting international terrorist organisation would call itself the bog? Anyway, I'm not going to say an awful lot this evening because I did say I was going to make a video about Rwanda, which I kind of have really, but I mean a lot of people have said a lot about Rwanda who know a lot more about it than me, and I did put a video on my liked videos all about that, which did go over what happened in Rwanda more or less from somebody who's an expert on the subject. But I just wanted to put a little compilation together of videos, mainly by you and Tony Blair, and to demonstrate how you just keep on pumping out this propaganda, and that you're a propagandist, and that both you and Tony Blair are puppets of the New World Order, and all this kind of lighting a candle for Rwanda and so on. It's so that people don't forget the official narrative. We have to have it drummed into us all the time, and you find this with memorial days for various things, that really the purpose of this, it's not to remember people who've died or any tragedy that's gone before, with the view of helping the people who experienced that, who are the descendants of those who experienced that. But it's to keep on and on reinforcing the official narrative so that anyone who questions it becomes a pariah. Like they get you writing articles about them in the New Statesman, repeatedly calling them a Nazi and things like that, because you haven't got an argument. Paranoid, a Nazi, having a nervous breakdown in the body politic. And you have to keep doing all of this, coming out with this slanderous allegations that you're making and wild speculations about people's emotional state because you haven't got an argument. Anyway, I shall leave it there for now, but the clips I've put together are really kind of a party political broadcast for the official narrative of Rwanda, which of course is the purpose of this is the globalist takeover of the entire world, which includes the takeover of Africa, and this is one of the reasons why they got rid of Gaddafi, because he wouldn't come on board with their political agenda. They got one of his sons involved with one of the Rothschilds, and he was running about everywhere with the Rothschilds, and then Tony Blair went and made friends with Gaddafi to try and get him on side, but Gaddafi was quite an eccentric character, and he was very dedicated to championing the cause of underdogs and revolutionary movements, and he would fund people and give them information and find out information about them and that kind of thing. And he wanted to introduce the African gold dinar, and he also wanted to make a kind of United States of Africa, which would be separate from the New World Order really. I mean, governed for the benefit of Africa, rather than for the globalist control freaks who you work for. So that's why they got rid of Gaddafi, and Hillary Clinton was extremely thrilled about this, and she's on video saying, "We came, we saw, and he died." This is because she's a complete psychopath just like you. But of course you never say anything about her, do you? You're too busy calling Donald Trump a Nazi. Despite the fact he opposed the Iraq war, and you haven't been able to give a single quotation from Donald Trump to substantiate your allegation that he's a Nazi or that he's against Muslims or Mexicans. Witness his language, you said, about Muslims and Mexicans. Okay, well you give us an example of it then, Rowan. So anyway, here you are, talking about Rwanda. I've already showed this video, but once again promoting the globalist narrative and making completely ridiculous statements like that the people of Rwanda just woke up one morning and forgot that their neighbours were human. Well, let's assume that one or two people did that. How many people would you need to perpetrate a genocide anyway? That's quite a lot of people just to wake up one morning and suddenly forget that their neighbours are human. It's just a completely absurd story. And you say, this is always what happens when genocide occurs. Well, that's what the globalists who are engineering all of this would like us to think, but in fact it's not true. Someone has to fund genocides for a start. And of course the people who've got all the money are the people who can print all the money, and they're the banksters who you work for. Anyway, I shan't talk any more this evening because I'm quite tired, and so I've put together some clips of the globalist narrative around Rwanda. So I hope you enjoy those and have a nice weekend. Especially in Abingdon in Oxford on Saturday night and Sunday morning, where I may be turning up to arrest you, so be alert. Hasta la próxima.
Let's start talking about the actual power structure that existed there in Rwanda and exists today, and the historical roots of this 100 days.
Well, the power structure that exists today is the Rwanda was brought to power. Paul Kagame, the current president, was brought to power by the Rwandan Patriotic Front. The military guerrilla campaign began on October 1st, 1990, culminated in the double presidential assassinations of the president of Rwanda and the president of Burundi on April 6, 1994, the so-called beginning of the so-called 100 days. And the Rwandan Patriotic Front seized power in a coup d'etat backed by the United States, Britain, and Israel. The 4-year civil war culminated in, as I said, this conclusion on July 15th, at the end of the 100 days. And the Rwandan Patriotic Front has had power since then, and this is a criminal regime, as criminal can be. You think of some of the worst dictators we've ever heard of in the past, for example, Augusto Pinochet from Chile, or give me somebody else, Hitler. I mean, more people have been killed because of Paul Kagame than the guy we know as Adolf Hitler. And that is not an understatement by any sense of the imagination. And it also sounds kind of like, if Keith Harmon Snow would say that, this guy must be crazy. He's comparing this guy, Paul Kagame, to Hitler. Well, that's not what I've heard. What I've heard is that Rwanda is the Switzerland of Africa today. The business climate is fantastic, and they're growing coffee. You can buy fair trade coffee at Starbucks, and it's safe, and they stopped the genocide. And there's reconciliation between Hutus and Tutsis being brought about by the Rwandan government. All of that is absolute nonsense. The government of Rwanda today is a criminal regime that has been engaged in extortion, conspiracies to murder and assassinate people outside of Rwanda and inside of Rwanda, in Europe, in the United States, in South Africa, with the most recent assassination, in Kenya, for example. The government of Rwanda today, if you can call them a government, has been involved in extortion, conspiracies, mass murder in the Congo, genocide in Rwanda, genocide in Uganda before they came to power in Rwanda, genocide in Rwanda itself, genocide in the Congo, and they're also involved in the genocidal campaigns going on in Sudan. So, and they've been involved in the criminal racketeering and extortion and absolute robbery in the Congo of the raw materials, in the Eastern Congo in particular. Most people, or some people, have heard about the fact that the coltan, columbium tantalite, is used in our cell phones, Sony PlayStations, laptop computers, and that this comes from Eastern Congo, and that this is responsible for the conflict in Eastern Congo, and in Eastern Congo that, it's the rape capital of the world. These are other partial truths and partial misconceptions advanced by the propaganda system to cover up or create what is otherwise basically the falsification of consciousness, the falsification of Western consciousness.
I'm now to turn to George Galloway, the Respect Party member of Parliament for Bradford West. Somebody who's not yet in the House of Lords, but probably one day will be, is Tony Blair. You have the most successful crowdfunding campaign for a film in UK history was your film, The Killings of Tony Blair. How much did you raise? What's going on with that film, and tell us some of the shocking stuff that you've discovered.
First of all, he won't go to the House of Lords, because if he did, he would have to register his earnings. And the one man in Britain who cannot possibly register his earnings is Tony Blair, because as this film will show, he's working for every tyranny, every dictatorship, every military junta, every grubby, dirty, rapacious corporation that you could possibly imagine, and more. The Sunday Times revealed a story we were going to reveal, that the son of the former king of Saudi Arabia was paying him $80,000 a month as a retainer and a 2% cut on any deals that he did. Now, one of the deals done by that oil company was with China, and it was worth $1 billion. 2% of $1 billion is a lot of money. Now, Tony Blair, his name is already mud. Can you imagine if he had to sit there with a pen, a quill, on a piece of House of Lords notepaper and register all of this?
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Daniel Makokera, coming to you from Kigali, Rwanda. This week we follow the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Mr. Tony Blair, who has just taken up an unpaid position of being the advisor to the President of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame. Mr. Blair, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about that. You're here in Rwanda, and you have taken this position. Why Rwanda?
Rwanda's undergone the most traumatic time, obviously, because of the genocide that was here. It's then rebuilt itself as a country. Britain, when I was Prime Minister, played a significant part in helping that process. And the President of Rwanda is someone I've got a lot of respect for, a lot of time for, and I think he has got a vision for the country now, but wants help in building the capability within the government to implement that vision.
How much do you know already of Rwanda, and have you scanned the terrain, as it were? The reason I ask this question is I'm trying to understand on which areas you think you could be helpful in.
Well, I think what the Rwandans have done, and in part with the help of the donor community, including and prominently Britain, is to draw up a strategic vision for the country. And they've now got that. And they've published that strategic vision. And it's a good one. I mean, it's got exactly the right priorities for them in terms of changing their economy, attracting in private investment, transforming their public services, education and health, creating the right circumstances of social and political and economic stability.
How long do you plan to stay in this capacity?
I mean, I do it as long as the President finds it useful. But we'll start off for a few months and let's see. And it's a kind of new thing for, President Clinton has made a big contribution to Africa through his foundation in the last few years. And that's his way of doing that. And you've got Bill Gates and others, and Bono and others who, and I've done a lot of work in terms of trying to raise the profile of Africa and so on. I'd like to add this as a new dimension of work, because I do, but we're still sort of feeling our way a bit on it. But I think I think there's a far bigger part of the picture that is to do with this issue of governance and capability than has been recognised up to now.
Question would be, aren't you thinly spread, progressive panel, the Africa Commission, and also you're with the quartet in the Middle East?
Yeah, there's always a danger of that, but so far I'm managing to work. And obviously I'm putting a team of people in as well. So I don't want to exaggerate what I can do at all, but I think if the President finds it useful, and as I say, someone I've got a lot of respect.
Positive about it.
Yeah, that Bill Clinton's probably made, I think he'd probably say this himself, maybe a bigger impact on Africa since leaving office than when he was in office. So there it is.
I suppose you have to have left office well, on a good note, as it were. We have to leave it there, Mr. Tony Blair. Thank you very much for having been my guest. That's where we leave it for this discussion, coming to you from Kigali, Rwanda. Till next time, goodbye and good night.
Mwiriwe. To our guests, I was saying good afternoon. My task right now is simple, is short, but very important. And this is to, after a brief comment, to invite our chief guest, and that is former President of the United States, Honorable Bill Clinton. And before I officially invite the President to come and talk to us, I just want to say a few things. One, it is to welcome the President and his team, the team of partners with the President, and the team he leads to partner with us, and wanted to pass a very warm welcome to the President and to the whole team that is accompanying him to our country. I also want to thank Honorable Bill Clinton for being a very good friend of ours, a friend of mine, and more importantly, a friend of this country, Rwanda. And equally important, to thank the President for his contribution to the reconstruction efforts of our country, whether it is in the area of health, agriculture, education, and many other areas. And there are many other friends in the audience who work with the President. I will not read out their names, but I'm sure they know that my heart and our hearts are with them, and we are happy and proud to work with them on this important task of transforming our country. Without much ado, Mr. President, I welcome you to speak to this audience.
I would like to join the Rwandan people during the Genocide Commemoration, as we all remember the hundreds of thousands of Rwandans who were lost 18 years ago. I extend my deepest sympathy to those who lost their relatives, friends, and loved ones during these terrible events. Now, as we remember those who have gone and the memories of those who survived, we have to think ahead to the next generation of Rwandans. Young people growing up in Rwanda today have actually a new and hopeful story to tell as they remember the history of their country. Today's young Rwandans can expect to grow up healthy, go to school, get a job afterwards. That's a dramatic shift from the generation before. Under the leadership of President Paul Kagame, Rwanda in many respects leads Africa today. Lifting 1 million people out of poverty over the last 5 years is an amazing feat by any global standard. For my part, I'm proud to continue to support the people of Rwanda, working with President Kagame through the Africa Governance Initiative, which I set up shortly after leaving office. My team on the ground are supporting Rwanda in the next phase of its story, working with the next generation of Rwandan public servants to drive progress on this extraordinary country's priorities. So I look forward to the next stage of Rwanda's development journey and continuing to work with the young people who are shaping Rwanda's bright future. Thank you and good luck. "15 years ago, in Rwanda, over 1 million innocent people were killed in just 100 days. The victims were Tutsis and moderate Hutus, all Rwandans. They were men and women, they were parents and children, they were young and old. The killing was merciless and unforgiving. For those 100 days, one person was murdered every 10 seconds. Whole families were wiped out, communities destroyed, a country left in ruins. Thousands of women were raped, countless children witnessed atrocities their young eyes should never have had to see. The genocide not only wiped out a generation, it smashed the dreams of all Rwandans to live as one in peace and prosperity. The perpetrators of the genocide believed that by elevating division over unity and sowing hatred instead of hope, they could change the course of Rwanda's history forever. Today we know that they failed. 15 years after the genocide, Rwanda is a country transformed. Under the formidable leadership of President Paul Kagame, it has become a role model for Africa and an inspiration to the world. It's one of the most stable, least corrupt countries in Africa. Roads are paved, schools and hospitals built, and jobs created. Last year, the economy grew by over 10%, and a country that was once a no-go area attracted more than 1 million visitors in 2008. Rwanda has still a long way to go, and it has an ambitious vision which the Rwandans will have to work hard to achieve. But they are heading in the right direction. Once seen as a basket case and endowed with few natural resources by the ingenuity of its people, Rwanda has shown that development is possible. It has pledged to end its dependency on foreign aid. It has become a leading player in the East African community. Rwandan soldiers are helping to keep the peace in Darfur. We must never forget the past. A generation of children need to learn about the mistakes of the past so that they do not grow up to repeat them. And the international community that failed Rwanda so badly in 1994 needs to be reminded that when it says never again, it has to mean it. But thanks to the hard work, determination, and compassion of its people, Rwanda can once again face the future with confidence.
The tragedy of Rwanda is that for a while people completely forgot the humanity of their neighbors. People who'd lived side by side for generations, people familiar with each other who knew each other well as human beings, suddenly forgot that other people were human beings. And that is always what happens when genocide occurs. The people of Rwanda are rebuilding bravely and prayerfully and hopefully at the moment. And our prayers and our thoughts are with them. All of us join with those prayers that we may never again, anywhere in the world, forget the humanity of our neighbors, that we may all be prepared to stand alongside our neighbors in love, in solidarity, and in compassion.